Welcome to the podcast on collaborative working. I'm Danielle Goodrick, Knowledge Product Manager at FCIPS, and joining me today I have David Loseby. Hi David, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Good stuff.
Great to have you here today. David has over 30 years of experience at Senior Executive Director level, driving value and change through procurement and organisational transformation. David also sits on the FCIPS Board of Trustees. So great to have you here and doing this podcast together. The last podcast we did on behavioural procurement skills was at the start of the pandemic, which seems a whole different world away now, but it has been really, really popular, especially around the softer skills that we discussed. So today we'll be focusing on collaborative working in supply chains, which is becoming ever more complex, placing an increased demand for these collaborative relationships to deliver successful outcomes and build resilience for the future. However, professionals still need to focus on the skills required to lead and manage these collaborations and change effectively and deliver successful results. David, thank you for creating the collaborative working guidance for FCIPS members. You've got such a wealth of experience in this area, and I'd really like to bring this piece to life for those listening today and look at the benefits, skills and tips for success. So if we start with the benefits then, what would you say are the main benefits of collaboration?
Thank you, Danielle. In terms of the benefits of collaboration, I think obviously, aside from the obvious ones in terms of having a better working relationship with whoever you may be collaborating with, clearly there are things like improved levels of inventory reductions. So the research has shown that could be up to 30%, in fact. Reduction in transport costs just simply by being more organised. And obviously, shorten lead times, particularly in retail where that's a critical component. And these can often be shortened by up to 50%. So again, the collaboration aspect comes through and does deliver real serious benefits. And obviously the improvement in customer service for the end customer, that is, but also then the improvement in the business working relationship are some of the real key benefits out of collaboration.
Thank you for touching on those benefits. I think they cover a wide variety of things. So if we look at individuals then and the skills required, what would you say are the essential skills to be an effective collaborator?
Well, there are many skills, and I list them out in the guide. But obviously, just picking on just a few of them because there are many. There are probably 20 or 30 skills actually. But some of the skills centre around the effective listening skills. And there is actually a technique around effective listening skills. So this is not just simply trying to sort of listen in on a conversation and think we've heard something rather than what we've actually heard. So empathy, obviously the ability actually, interestingly enough, in a collaboration context of being able to both lead and follow what is happening in a project and also accept sometimes that even as a leader, actually it's better for you to play a different role in a collaboration project. So being prepared to do that and recognizing that that's how you'll then deliver a collaborative value. The clarity around how communication happens, this whole thing around communicating effectively as well as listening effectively, communicating effectively, listening effectively, all those skills around making sure that you go into a conversation without sort of any pre-assigned or prejudged thoughts around what that communication might be, making sure you interpreted it correctly, make sure that your tone has changed to the audience and the context, the language might need to change or vary depending on what sort of situation you may be in. But obviously always out of all these things, looking for those positive outcomes through a win-win. It can never ever be a situation whereby, particularly as a purchaser or a sourcing professional, that actually you're in a situation whereby you're just simply looking for gain from the purchasing organization. There has to be a dual aspect to this, and that's so critical as an effective collaborator.
Thank you. Some really good points that you noted on there. Do you think collaboration's developed over the years?
Well, yes, certainly I would. And it's interesting. I mean, obviously on the journey, as you're aware, I researched over, I think it was around about 85, 88 different academic research papers in actually pulling the the collaborative guide together, along with plenty of stuff from the if you like, the management papers and all sorts of other things. But there's actually 4.7 million research papers being produced on collaboration alone since the 1970s. And in the last 5 years, 57,000. So obviously the rate has slowed down, but nevertheless, there's a wealth of information over the years, for sure.
And we're seeing this new era of inter-organisational collaboration across supply chains. So why do you think collaboration is so important in supply chains today?
Well, I think the recognition, particularly, and even probably in the current times of a pandemic, the complexity and the velocity in our supply chains is huge. And obviously, what we need to recognise is that we can't just simply rely upon exchanging, electronically information. We have to then find means of actually collaborating effectively through whatever digital or face-to-face or community of channels, or like we're doing today, this podcast. Doing this sort of stuff by Zoom or by Teams or however we do it is so critical to that whole proposition, because if you think about it logically, with that level of complexity, the risk and the ability for something to go wrong, to be miscommunicated, to be misunderstood, to be misconnected, whatever it happens to be, means then that obviously the more we can do in terms of collaboration, understanding, getting people to understand our business, what's important to us, what might be a trigger event, or all those kind of things are crucial to maintaining that sort of efficiency within our supply chains.
And that efficiency will continue, obviously, as we come out of the pandemic. So you mentioned risk there, but how can collaboration create more resilience for organisations in the future, do you think?
Well, I think future resilience, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that, but I think, people have talked about, we're just going to simply pull away from China, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. The reality is we're not going to pull away from China completely. We can't, because it's become the manufacturing heartland of the world. So we can't just simply pull away, but we do need to derive better agility and flexibility in our supply chains. And obviously recognizing that at times speed of response is critical, particularly where, you've got the issue of, I'll call it, a service type environment, whereby certainly for us in Rolls-Royce, we have to get aircraft back and up in the air within a matter of days. Excuse me. So recognizing that speed of response might be critical, but also then it's not just simply possible to have thousands and thousands of inventory and buffer stocks, because there is a capital cost to putting all that kind of spares and equipment on the ground. So therefore, the visibility and the transparency with where equipment or spares might be with anywhere within the world within our supply chains is critical to being able to access it and redeploy it to either a manufacturing or a service location is hugely important. So this whole question of I'll call it the criticality of information sharing, and it's quality information, it's timely information, all those sorts of things is really, really important. So therefore, this sharing of resource between either manufacturers or retailers or whatever it happens to be and their supply chains is hugely critical. And the alignment then, therefore, of that sort of potentially that resource that might exist to do it. So you might even get to a situation where the right thing to do is to have shared resources within a supply chain or fulfillment network, because that's the right thing to do, because it gives both parties that real time transparency that's necessary for the ability to be able to move stock quickly.
And you touched on speed and agility there and pooling resources. And I know you were involved in the recent ventilators collaboration in the UK during COVID-19. Can you talk a little bit more about your involvement in that and how it worked and perhaps what you learned along the way? It was obviously critical that things happened, and perhaps competitors worked together during that time as well. So it'd just be really useful to share your experience.
think it's yes. I mean, it was certainly an amazing experience, and many of the people that have worked on it have said that I'm probably not going to get this kind of opportunity in my career ever again. I mean, for those that don't know, we produced 8,000 ventilators in 12 weeks, which you know, is quite phenomenal, really, when you think about it. So these are full-scale medical ventilators. So in terms of I'll call it the collaboration that we were part of. So part of the UK government's initiative was to set up a number of collaboration hubs or arrangements to produce ventilators for the pandemic. And certainly in ours, we had to put in place 117 suppliers, you know, 288 unique bills of materials for parts. We consumed 3.4 million parts in the process of manufacturing these ventilators, and obviously literally hundreds of people in the process of actually standing this up and getting it done. So, you know, the whole exercise was a massive exercise, which you know, for us was hugely fulfilling. But again, I think, as you say, Danielle, I think the recognition that for us doing collaboration on this scale was, you know, the number one goal in terms of we must collaborate because we can't do it any other way. It was quite interesting. Somebody remarked that had we gone down a traditional public procurement path, it probably would have taken us 12 to 18 months to even let the contract.
Yeah.
So the lessons learned in terms of, you know, I think it'll be interesting when we do the final analysis and study. And as you might well be aware, is that we are in fact, or I am in fact, collaborating with the university that I'm associated with, University of East Anglia, and the University of Strathclyde, to produce a research paper on the back of the work that was done within the consortium with Rolls-Royce. So, you know, there's huge amounts of lessons learned out of this, huge amounts of lessons learned, and highly satisfying.
I'm sure, as you say, such an experience to be part of. It would be great to be able to see what you do in terms of the lessons learned. We'd love to see it, what you wrap up. So just to close then, what would be your top tips for successful collaborations?
Top tips for me will always be, I guess the number one will always be, you have to want to collaborate. The bottom line is, don't go into collaboration or say you're going to do collaboration if your only motivation is to drive more cost savings. You have to want to collaborate. Collaboration has to be the foremost driver. And as I said, I think earlier, for me, the importance is that there are benefits for all parties involved in the collaboration. It can't just be one party gaining from a collaboration event. Otherwise, it's not a collaboration event, frankly. Yeah. It doesn't meet the acid test, as they say. But I think also what I've recognised in the many organisations that I've worked in, making sure that you've got effective and proactive sponsorship, usually from the executive board or something like that, is an absolute essential. So, for instance, in the ventilator project, to give you just to bring that to life, our CEO Warren East was the sponsor of the project. So you know, that kind of sort of real sort of, how can I put it, tangible high level sponsorship is critical, and being very visible and being very proactive in the process. But also collaborations are not short-term fixes. So if you want a short-term fix, collaboration is not for you. It is a long-term, how can I put it, commitment by all sides to collaboration. And obviously, you know, as we probably well know in our own personal lives, trust and transparency within that collaboration are first and foremost. And we have to make sure that we, I'll call it, sort of really honor and protect, in a sense, that whole ethos of having trust and transparency at the bedrock of what we do. And then the classic, as we discussed earlier in the podcast, you know, effective listening and communicating is so essential. I just can't reinforce it enough. So we must really make sure that what we've said, the other party is truly understood, and vice versa. It is definitely a two-way street. So they would be my top tips, as they say.
Really useful advice there, especially around the trust and transparency, and part of both strategies, and a willingness for it to be more of a long-term thing in terms of working together. So thank you so much, as always. Great to speak to you.
You're welcome.
Good luck for your future collaboration projects. Can't wait to hear more about them, and hope to speak to you again soon.
All right, that's brilliant. Thank you, Danielle. Have a good day.
And thank you. And thank you to those tuning into the podcast today. The collaborative working guidance from David, plus other CIPS collaboration tools and resources, can be found at cips.org/knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.